Imagine, if you would, for a minute, selling 17 million pieces of clothing each and every year and only putting a tiny little dent in the world's used clothing market, including all of the waste, trash, and garbage that ends up in the oceans, the deserts, and landfills. Today, we're gonna see just that. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? I found this video from Business Insider that they just posted up a few days ago, and it is about the used clothing market. It has to do with recycling, with where your used clothing goes, whether it's resold, recycled, or destroyed, or ends up in a landfill. And also, it has to do a little bit with the ThredUp business, which is the first part of that we're gonna dive into. Without further ado, I'm going to show you this story, and if you could, please, it would mean a lot to me, share this video within the community, in Facebook groups, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere you can think of, because I think it's super important that everybody sees this, because it really shows what used clothing markets look like, not just from what we do at thrift stores and eBay and Poshmark, but what happens to that stuff afterwards and down the line, and even before we get a hold of it. Let's check it out.
This is one of the world's biggest collections of used clothing.
It essentially feels like you're in the Matrix, but it's clothing.
ThredUp, an online resale platform, has paid people to clean out their closets for over 15 years. The company sold nearly 17 million items last year, but that's just a tiny fraction of the global trade in secondhand apparel.
The average life of a garment in an American closet now is only 2.5 years.
An old pair of jeans can
So we talked about that before in my last video a week ago, that people don't keep stuff, right? 2.5 years is the average age of a garment. Now, this is not an advertisement for ThredUp. I don't work with them. I don't know them. I'm not sponsored by them. It's simply part of this video that Business Insider made. Full credit to them for covering this. I think it's great. But that goes to show you how quickly that this fast fashion just rotates in our closets, and that people are buying on average 60 pieces of clothes a year, which is crazy, right? Like, I don't understand it, but let's keep going.
traveled thousands of miles from its original owner, changing hands several times. But eventually, most of this stuff ends up as trash. Around the world, a garbage truck's worth of clothing is dumped or burned every second. Demand for used clothing is growing. Platforms like ThredUp hope new tech will help keep more of it in closets and out of landfills. So how does this massive warehouse work?
Now, I want everyone to take notes on this part of the video. I'm just going to let it play through now, because this is going to show you some of the ways they speed up their process. And I'm not saying we can replicate this because they have millions of dollars of equipment, but maybe, just maybe, there's some things you can pull from this to speed up your own process for processing and listing items at home. Check this out. It's incredible.
And where does unsold clothing actually end up? Anyone can ship used clothing to ThredUp. The company started out as a peer-to-peer business like Poshmark or eBay. But in 2011, it pivoted to handle the entire selling process, from listing to shipping.
From Gap to Gucci, we really are willing to accept, process, list, and sell all of it.
Clothes arrive at the warehouse in what ThredUp calls clean-out kits.
It's about the size of a laundry bag. They basically put all of the clothing that they're not wearing anymore in that bag and send it to one of our distribution centers.
After opening up the clean-out kits, Erica Anderson's team weeds out anything dirty or ripped.
Anything that's gross, to be honest. We love to check hot spots, under the arms, crotches, all of that.
Once an item passes inspection, the labels are tagged into ThredUp's network with help from AI. Dan DeMeyer oversees this process.
There's a lot that AI can automate in terms of detecting color pigments, determining what a category is. We now even have the ability to automate measurement collection, which is something that's new for us towards the end of last year.
The company also uses an algorithm that prices items based on size, quality, and demand.
We have this learning system where this algorithm gets smarter and smarter as we scale, as we process and sell more items to get better and better at the listing price.
Has anybody actually used ThreadUp? Has anybody sent clothing into them and had a good experience, bad experience, whatever it was? Leave it in the comments section. I've never used it. Again, I'm not a sponsor. I'm not promoted by them. And I have no experience with them, but I have had a ton of people in my Facebook groups and in my social medias tell me their experiences. And I've heard quite a few bad ones. I've heard some good ones, but I've heard some bad ones about not accepting certain brands or types of items, that they're very strict on certain things, which we're going to hear about in a minute, and that their pricing is not always up to snuff. Now remember, they have to make a profit, so of course they're going to offer you a lot less than you might be used to getting on, like, you know, eBay or Poshmark. So that's kind of the pricing side that I understand, but the whole consistency and the condition and the acceptance rates, that one can be a little sketchy at times, not just from them, but from any of these send-in companies. Also, the authentication is never perfect with any of these eBays or RealReals or any of these companies, so that's another thing to be wary of. But we're going to hear about that in a second. Let's go.
Next, everything gets tagged with a QR code. Then the garment takes a ride on a 100,000 square foot hanger system, which runs through the whole facility. ThreadUp launched it in 2018, and it helped pull items 5 times faster. The next stop on the line is the photography department.
This is also another automated station. The item rotates and there's like cameras that are mounted all around it, taking photos. So not only do we have like the front, the back, and the side, but we actually have 360 photography.
Most items will spend 1 to 2 months in this warehouse before they're sold.
When you see these carousels behind me spin, what they're doing is bringing items forward that customers have purchased, so our operators can then go through the carousel and find that item with speed and ease.
Workers bring the purchased items down to pack stations and fold them up for shipping. The original owners get a cut of that sale. That can range from a few dollars to several hundred, depending on the brand.
Our top-selling brands are Lululemon, Madewell, J. Crew, Ann Taylor Loft. The higher the listing price, the higher the percentage.
ThreadUp has a team of authenticators who verify luxury products from brands like Gucci, Hermes, and Givenchy. For now, it only sells used clothing for women and children.
One of the challenges with men is they buy a lot less clothing, and when they buy it, they wear it for years and years and years. But in terms of being able to sell it online, it's a little fewer and far between what items would actually be in good enough shape to resell.
Yeah, he's 100% right. I keep my clothes way longer than Kate does. She buys way more clothes than I do. I think that's pretty true across the board for women versus men. Us guys, we get clothes that we like and we keep it for a while. Guys in the chat, am I right? I think that's kind of common sense that like guys tend to keep our clothes a lot longer. We find stuff that we like and we wear it and it just lasts us for a while, and we don't care how it looks on us so much as like a woman might care how much things look. You know, last year's dress, we hear about that. Not shaming anybody, I'm just saying women are more cognizant of that stuff. Guys tend not to care as much. We just wear what we wear. We go to our buddy's wedding in the same dress pants and dress shirt. Women are like, I better get a new dress. So no offense, ladies, that's just sort of how it works, right? We find us guys are a lot less mindful of that stuff, and on accident we're doing better for the environment because we're wearing our stuff you know, for more and more time. But yeah, that's just sort of what I noticed between guys and girls. Again, no shaming at all. Don't give me crap in the comments. I'm not saying anything bad about women. I'm just saying guys just stick with what we like, and women tend to, you know, will be more apt to buy something new. They tend to buy more clothes. That's a proven fact. Women spend more on clothes over the course of a year than men, and their clothing lasts shorter times than guys' clothing, and they mention it there in the video. So that's just sort of a little thing. It's true with me, at least, and Kate. So I don't know about all of you, but you can let me know in the comments section. Just don't roast me. I'm not shaming or being mean to anyone.
In 2024, ThreadUp introduced a suite of AI shopping tools, like this virtual stylist called Style Chat. If you type in retro style prints, you'll get outfit recommendations based on what's in stock.
It's basically like a natural language back and forth conversation you can have with ThreadUp about what you're looking for.
ThreadUp also released an AI image search, where you can upload photos and have the AI look for similar items across the site. The company says people using this tool are 85% more likely to buy something because of the more tailored experience. It's estimated that over half of US consumers will use AI to shop online this year. But what happens to the items that ThreadUp can't sell? The company told us it doesn't directly dispose of any clothing. Instead, it passes it along to Aftermarket Partners. That's where resellers like Stephen Bethel come in. He founded Bank & Vogue in the early 90s to buy pre-owned clothes from thrift stores and charities that couldn't sell them.
We just go around and pick up the beer cans at the end of the party. So the first thing is, we're not going to call it waste. You know, there's no such thing as waste in this world.
He helps find international buyers for the estimated 780,000 metric tons of used clothing the US and Canada export every year.
A typical thrift operator sells about 25% of what is donated. So 75% of it, they need to find a home for.
Typically, leftovers from places like Goodwill get squished into bales and end up in places like Gujarat, India, where Stephen operates a sorting and recycling hub.
We're taking existing...
So interesting part of this story here, I actually dealt with a company, and I won't name them because of privacy and non-disclosures that I probably still have with them, that do exactly this. They get tons of donations and clothing and thrift purchases from everyday consumers like us, out of closets, out of donations, out of all this stuff, and only 20 to 25% of it they're able to resell on eBay and Poshmark and platforms where they sell Depop. They have their own store as well, their own walk-in store. And the other 75% they export to countries in Southeast Asia and India and Central America and South America and also to Africa. And that's 75 to 80% of all donated clothes that come out of our closets, come out of normal people's places, end up, 20% end up reselling to people like us, like we're the guys buying it and then selling it, but 80% end up overseas, which is a pretty staggering number. And this gentleman that you're watching here has figured out how to be the middleman from these companies like a ThreadUp or like the company that I dealt with. They have a middleman company as well. It's not this guy, but it's someone else. And they purchase these goods, the 80%, and then they find a buyer for it in one of these third world or overseas countries.
Garments that can't be resold, and we're turning them into new and relevant items. We try to find the best value in the world for the clothing.
Pakistan is one of the world's largest importers of used garments. The country has special economic zones dedicated to resorting these goods. Workers here sort 25 metric tons of used clothes every day into hundreds of categories. From tops and casual jeans to children's clothes and fitness gear, everything is sorted into its own category. Much of this is sold domestically in Pakistan, but the main job here is preparing garments for re-export.
Just so you guys can understand, 50 tons of clothing, a ton is 2,000 pounds generally, a metric ton could be even more. You're talking about 50 to 60,000 pounds of clothes. Generally, one pallet of clothes is 1,000 pounds, so 50 to 60 pallets every single day this facility is sorting. That's just to give you an idea. That's 2 tractor trailer loads. Usually it's in the mid-20s of numbers of pallets, single stack, that you can fit on a tractor trailer load. So that'll give you an idea just how much every single day they're processing.
In those sorting houses, there's a triage that happens. And then there are specific containers made based on quality, based on condition, that are then resold to relevant markets. And it's really important because there are some markets, for example, in Central America where they really like strappy dresses, but you can't sell strappy dresses in Jordan.
Repackaged bales are often sent to places.
Everybody understand what he just said? You can't sell strappy dresses in Jordan. It's not allowed. The women there are very suppressed and not allowed to wear stuff like that in some cases. And so in some countries, they don't allow that. So it could be sold in Central America or South America, but not in a Middle Eastern, very strict country like that. So he's pointing that out.
With low import taxes and large secondhand markets, like Accra, Ghana. When we filmed there in 2022, it was home to one of the largest secondhand markets in Africa. Shipping containers filled with millions of garments arrived at Kantomato Market every week. And this place employed thousands of people.
You see the way I'm squeezing my face? The fire burns me.
Vendors would bid on bales sight unseen, usually paying a few $100s. Then they tried to turn a profit by selling what they found in the market. But vendors only sold about 60% of the goods.
Man, it's like buying mystery boxes and pallets here in America, right? You never know what you're gonna get, and you just gotta take it out to your flea market booth and try to flip it and make a profit or put it on your eBay store. Interesting, no different, even in a third world country like that one.
Through Kantomato Market. The rest ended up in dumps or washed out to sea. Liz Ricketts runs a nonprofit called the OR Foundation, which supports people working in this market.
So what we believe is that what you're seeing is a sliver of what is actually lying on the ocean floor.
Most of the clothes we wear today are made from synthetic fibers like polyester. In the environment, they break down into microplastics, and they're extremely flammable. In January 2025, much of the Contomato market burned to the ground, killing 2 people and impacting the livelihoods of 10,000 workers. Most of the market has now been rebuilt. Thousands of miles away in Chile, a special free trade zone allows merchants to import tons of used clothing without paying the usual taxes and fees. The country is the largest importer of used clothing in Latin America. About 130,000 tons of it arrive here every year. But the country imports more clothing than it can handle. So much comes from the United States that here used clothing is often referred to as ropa americana, American clothing. Most of these garments are poor quality and hard to sell. So local vendors have been dumping unsold clothing in the Atacama Desert for over 20 years. It's illegal, but authorities don't have enough resources to stop it.
Of course not.
This pile in the Atacama Desert was once so big it could be seen from space. In June 2022, it caught fire and burned for 2 weeks.
With the right partner to help make your data AI ready, you can uncover insights for better products and performance. Together, we can see more than possibilities, so you see success. HPE, unlock ambition.
In recent years, there have been some technological innovations to handle clothing waste, like textile-to-textile recycling, a process where used clothing can be transformed back into raw fibers and spun into new yarn. But collecting, sorting, and processing old clothes is complicated and difficult to scale. Today, less than 1% of old clothes are recycled into new garments. Shay Sethi founded his company AmberCycle in 2015 and developed a new chemical process for separating polyester from dyes and other fabrics and turning it into new material.
The idea for AmberCycle is really just, how do you take an old t-shirt and turn it into a new t-shirt instead of using natural resources?
In 2020, a research institute in Hong Kong started experimenting with textile-to-textile recycling. It partnered with H&M to make this machine, which turns used clothes into new ones in about 3 days. But recycling a single garment this way still requires some virgin material.
Yeah, so it requires some more material, but also 3 days to turn one piece of product or one stack of material into one product. That's not going to make sense. It's not going to make people money, and that's what a lot of these companies are after, is just money. And to spend that much time and effort on recycling one piece of clothing is quite tough. No one is going to take on that challenge because it would take a ridiculous amount of resources, money, manpower to try and keep that recycling up. And so that's the problem. Like it requires a lot of effort and a lot of money and a lot of time to tackle this recycling problem. And so for a lot of people, and especially in a lot of countries, it's easier to just dump it in the desert or dump it in the ocean, and here we are. And so that's sort of the problem that we face. And that's why we're trying to preach to the other side is, let's buy less clothes, let's produce less clothes, let's thrift for as much as you can, and let's keep the market going with what we have and not just keep producing more and more stuff. So that's sort of the argument for that side.
In Pakistan, one family-owned company took the idea of recycling clothes to a factory scale. Artistic Fabric Mills is one of the first companies in Pakistan to repurpose old cotton into new denim. But sales of cheaply made clothes continue to outpace efforts to deal with the waste they create. ThreadUp is trying to do its part as well. The company accepts fast fashion items to save them from landfills. But unlike other garments, the original owners don't get a cut of the sale.
And that is a nod to sort of not incentivizing them to keep shopping fast fashion.
And so what they're doing is, if you send in Forever 21 or Charlotte Russe or any of those fast fashion low-end brands they're not worth much money anyways, they're not going to pay you for them, but you can still send it in as part of your clean out kit. They'll accept it, and then they'll try to put it back out into the market recycled rather than you just going and throwing it away. So they're trying to take care of that. They're also trying to incentivize people not to buy that stuff. They don't want you buying that stuff, because if you buy that stuff, you know, when it gets to you being done with it, you can't sell it through ThredUp. There's not a lot of options. So you'd want to rather buy other stuff that you might be able to resell later down the road if you get rid of it. Problem with that is you have to pay up for that stuff. If you're buying Gucci and Burberry and higher end, you know, Madewell and Lululemon, you're going to be spending a lot more money to buy that stuff up front than you would for this fast fashion stuff. And that's sort of the problem they're facing. Fast fashion is cheap.
The government is putting pressure on brands too. The US is closing a tax loophole that allowed brands like Shein and Temu to import ultra cheap clothes duty-free.
Covered that in a whole lot of videos. If you want to check it out, I'll link it below. It's called de minimis. Anything less than $800 used to not have an import tax. President Trump has closed that loophole. It officially begins May 1st, which is in just 2 days. No longer can companies like Shein and Temu ship that stuff into us duty and inspection free. They're going to have to pay their fair share to get it to us, but that means customers are going to have to pay more for the product because they're certainly going to pass it along.
Countries including France have passed extended producer responsibility laws, or EPRs, which force clothing companies to fund recycling programs for the waste they create. Since it passed the law in 2008, France has seen a threefold increase in the collection and recycling of used textiles. But in the US, California is the only state with a textile EPR law on the books.
We are only going to get the brands to change the way in which they make clothes by legislating that there needs to be recycled content. Because we've seen over the last 30, 40 years that just letting people do what they want to do, letting companies do what they want to do, they answer to their shareholders first before they answer to the environment. And that's wrong.
And so that's ultimately the end game, is that these companies want to make money. They don't care about how much harm they're going to do to the environment, whether their clothes can be recycled, the materials, or how long they'll last, all that good stuff. All they care about is how cheap can they make it, how quickly can they get it to us, and how much of it can they sell. So what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about, there's three good topics here. ThredUp and their operation, 17 million pieces of clothes every year, which is crazy. Have you had experience with them? So that's kind of topic one. Topic two is this third-party reselling stuff, exporting it to other countries and what they do with it, their markets and all the craziness that they're doing. And then, of course, obviously the stuff that ends up in the recycling or in, unfortunately, the oceans, the desert, the trash piles. How do we reduce that? How do we solve that? I'm going to leave the comments up to you guys. I'm going to link it below, which is the link directly to Business Insider's video. I super appreciate them. They had a lot of good content there, so please give them the credit that they deserve, especially Elizabeth McCauley, who is the narrator of that video. She did a really great job on that. The fact checkers, the producers, everybody from Business Insider, they have a great operation, so thank you for that video. And thanks for bringing it to our attention and letting us see a little bit behind the scenes of how the used clothing market actually works, because so many of you are involved in it. I think it's important that you know what happens when you sell stuff, when you don't sell stuff, when you recycle, when you trash. There you go. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Also, if you could do me a huge favor, my Facebook group is still disabled as of now. I'm actively working with Facebook to get it back up. We created a second group in the meantime for everyone to have somewhere to go and talk and network and learn. I'll link it below. It's called Thrifter Reseller World 2. You can join that, and hopefully I'll see you over there. And until next time, enjoy your afternoon, everybody, and I will see you later.